Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for joining. It's your host, Skylar, and this is Courtside with Sky. And welcome to the live. Let's get this show started. We're trial watching Diddy case, and we're just catching up with what happened yesterday before they get started today. So,
hear this monumental case. This is a full recap of the day and what you might have missed in court. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
let's get it.
Law and crime legal alert. So lawsuits allege that antacid use has been linked to increases in stomach cancer and gastric cancer. Yeah. So if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with stomach cancer or gastric cancer after using an antacid, you may qualify for compensation. One of our legal sponsors is partnering with the Driscoll Law Firm. This is a national firm helping those injured to ensure their claims are thoroughly presented. Visit antacidclaims.com/sidebar. Scan the QR code on screen to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. It's official. We're here. The start of United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs. What began with his arrest in September of 2024, an indictment on federal sex crimes charges, now brings us to May 5th, 2025, the start of his trial, the start of jury selection, to be more precise. Can't believe we're here. I've said it before. I've said it again. The idea of this going to trial in under a year from his arrest and indictment at the federal level, very, very rare. But he has been speeding his way towards trial, wants his day in court, and now we are here. So this case has changed a lot, too, since September, by the way. Over the last several months, his indictment has been amended. We're now at his third superseding indictment, where he's facing 5 counts. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. So that's that Combs and others allegedly created a criminal enterprise using the resources and personnel of his multifaceted business empire, where he allegedly abused, threatened, and coerced women to fulfill his sexual desires, including engaging in prolonged or extensive or elaborate sexual performances, sometimes known as freak-offs, that included sex workers. They're the underlying predicate acts that need to be proved, at least 2 need to be proved in order to get the racketeering charge, these underlying crimes that make up the larger pattern of criminal racketeering activity. So whether that be kidnapping.
That's me, right about to get into a head-on collision. This is how I went from a $12,000 offer.
Be kidnapping, forced labor, arson, sex trafficking. And speaking of which, counts 2 and 4 are sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of victims 1 and 2, namely that Combs intentionally harbored, transported, enticed these alleged victims to cause them to engage in commercial sex acts using force, fraud, or coercion. Commercial sex acts, meaning something of value was exchanged or promised. Counts 3 and 5, transportation to engage in prostitution, namely that Combs allegedly transported victims and commercial sex workers for purposes of sex work, for purposes of prostitution. And now we need a panel of 12 jurors with potentially 6 alternates to sit and hear this case in Manhattan federal court. And it's being reported that 150 potential jurors are being brought in. So what did day 1 of jury selection look like in Sean Combs' criminal case? Well, since there are no cameras allowed in federal court, we have with us our very own eyes and ears about what happened in that courtroom today. Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner was there. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jesse.
So I'm going to start with the question I always ask you. How did Diddy look? What was he wearing? And who was with him?
Well, today was a lot different, obviously, because it's day 1 of jury selection, or to some, they consider it day 1 of the trial. So Diddy looked completely different from his pretrial hearing in that he wasn't wearing the standard issue khaki tan jumpsuit provided by MDC. Instead, he looked a lot different. And as we know from the last judge's order that was made last week, Diddy is allowed to wear normal attire, but he looked a little similar to what I kind of presumed to be a choir boy. So he came in with a blue pullover sweater. He had a white collared shirt. He had navy slacks. Couldn't get a look at his shoes, but of course we know from the judge's order that he is not allowed to have laces on those shoes. So it's unclear if he had just shoes with no laces, wearing loafers. Couldn't see from where I was inside the gallery, because I was even lucky to get inside that courtroom today, because let me tell you, Jesse, it is inundated with so much press from honestly around the world. This is not just a nationwide case. There are international outlets out here as well too, trying to get inside that courtroom, trying to get a peek at Diddy. And I thankfully was one of the lucky few to get inside, because I think they were only allowing about 10 or 15 people from the press, because the rest had to be filled with a lot of prospective jurors. So the side where normally the defense's side sits, or normally the family sits, instead that entire side was empty, at least for the first half of court today, mainly because we had to put in all those jurors. And I know we're going to talk about that more in a second. But as far as Diddy goes today, his demeanor seemed upbeat at first, but then there was a moment, I think it was a little bit before the lunch break, where Diddy kept having to go, take some restroom breaks in between the prospective jurors' questions and that type of sort. And then he uttered something that I found to be pretty astounding, given how confident and upbeat he appeared. He said, "Your Honor, I'm a little nervous," which is something that finally you kind of see the mask slip off a little bit, where it's like Diddy is finally admitting the weight is kind of coming on to him as far as having to go to trial for these federal charges that he's facing. And of course, that being 5 federal charges that he's facing, which could carry, if he is sentenced, or if he is convicted on these charges, could carry decades in prison. So it's a lot of weight on his shoulders. And we've kind of presumed that as well too, because obviously since he's been incarcerated, his hair has been great. He did come in today. His face wasn't completely shaven, so his goatee was a little white as well too. But when he had first come into the courtroom, he did what he usually does. He hugged all of his attorneys. He looked outside, or he looked into the gallery to see who was there as far as family goes. Unfortunately, no immediate family was inside the courtroom today. But again, we have 2 more months to go of trial, so it's likely that they'll be here for opening statements. But that's, unclear as far as what family members will be there at what times, that type of sort. But as far as today inside the courtroom, it was really that associate or member of his entourage who, again, was wearing that free puff hat, that free puff sweatshirt. But instead, he had to flip it inside out, as we probably presumed, because those prospective jurors are going to be coming into that same courtroom where we're sitting as the press, where his associates are sitting. So he had to turn that shirt inside out. And what I did also spot was Justin Combs's brother inside the courtroom too. Now, with Justin Combs's brother, we have to remember that he is not Diddy's son. However, it's somebody who has been who Diddy is obviously very familiar with, that being his son's other brother from a different relationship, because it's a tangled family web as far as everything goes with the family and everything like that. But while Justin Combs wasn't inside the courtroom, his brother was. And I think Diddy kind of looked at both of those two associates and then Justin Combs' brother kind of as support, kind of as like a nice presence to be inside the courtroom, because I do think he relies a lot on the support of his family and of his loved ones to be inside that courtroom. But again, we still have 2 more.
Deep in the oldest part of Cairo, there's a mysterious salon known as the Crown Temple, run by a group of Black women in their 70s and 80s, with hair so thick and long.
Two more months of trial, so I assume, his mother, his daughter, maybe possibly his daughters, but at least bare minimum his sons will be inside that courtroom. If they'll be there every day, that's a wait and see, but I'm sure for opening statements they definitely will be.
And I got to say, I'm not surprised. If he meant it, he's nervous. Look, it's not only decades. He could potentially face life in prison if he's convicted of the most serious charge. And look, his defense team was pushing forward to get this in front of a jury as soon as possible. It seems they feel confident in getting an acquittal here or putting the prosecution's feet to the fire. I want to move on to a little bit about what happened today. You and I had spoken earlier today about who was there for him. Attorneys there for him. Mark Garagos now there is in a more of a consultant role. So you have the attorneys, you have the prosecutors in court. I want to talk about
be honest, I'll be nervous
jury.
Too.
Okay, so it's my understanding that prospective jurors came in last week. They filled out these questionnaires. And based on their responses, that number is going to be ultimately whittled down to the jurors who were selected in this case. So first, before we even get into the ins and outs of what jurors said in court, can you just give us a brief snapshot of what were some of the questions that these jurors were asked in their questionnaires, because that became a big focus of what their responses were. So, and I know, and by the way, just to let everybody know, a little while ago, the court actually released preliminary instructions in this case and some of those questions too, and maybe we'll put it up. But Elizabeth, you give us a general brief idea about what were some of the questions they were asked.
Well, some of the questions included just people and places, whether or not there was a whole laundry list of celebrities and whether or not these prospective jurors were familiar with them. You know, they range from Kanye West to Michael B. Jordan to Young Miami to Dallas Austin, who's a music producer, to Harve Pierre, who actually was named as one of the defendants in one of Diddy's civil suits. And so prospective jurors were asked who they knew, and most of them were very honest about their answering. They were like, you know what, I don't know them personally, but I do recognize, for example, Michael B. Jordan from movies. Obviously, Sinners is very popular right now. So, of course, that is probably going to be the name most were able to answer yes or no to. But I was kind of surprised at how many people didn't know of these laundry lists of popular celebrities, especially when you have names like Kanye West on there, especially when you have names like, you know, Michael B. Jordan, that type of sort. But there were some prospective jurors who did not, or who were not familiar with these certain people. Now, as far as places goes, I don't know the full extent of what was asked as far as places goes, but there was this one juror who did kind of talk about a hotel, the Essex House Hotel, that was on the list of places that prospective jurors were asked about. And this juror in particular, he just said, you know, he had worked at this particular hotel sometime last year and all of that sort. Now, as far as some of the other questions that were asked, you know, they were asked simple questions as far as, do you know any additional information about this case? Do you have any training in addictive treatment, domestic violence, sexual abuse? Do you have any views about prosecutors or law enforcement? Have you been involved in legal issues such as a lawsuit, such as a criminal case? Have you been a victim of a crime? Do you have feelings about law enforcement, hip hop artists, witnesses testifying under immunity, witnesses also testifying under a pseudonym? And is there any reason that you wouldn't be able to serve as a prospective juror? Now, some of these questions, especially when it comes to legal issues, criminal issues, surprisingly, a lot of people were very forthcoming, whether it be that they were in a DUI accident, that being that they were the victim of a DUI accident. One woman had talked about how she stole a wand from Harry Potter World. Yeah. A lot of these jurors have been very transparent as far as being honest about some of the legal issues that they've dealt with in their past.
I definitely want to get into all that for sure. And by the way, just before I get into a little bit more of the celebrity aspect, so I understand the judge came in, brought the jurors in, read them preliminary instructions. And just so everybody knows what we're dealing with, I'm reading from this document that was released. You know, don't do any research on this case. Don't discuss your questions and answers of the case with anyone or until further instructed by the court. But listen to the schedule. Potential jurors will be called back for further questioning and jury selection from Monday, May 5th through Friday, May 9th. Your availability during that week will be required. The trial will commence on Monday, May 12th, 2025. That's again, assuming they can get a jury by that time. This trial is expected to last about 8 weeks. And generally, trial will be held 5 days per week, Monday through Friday. During the first week of trial, Monday, May 12th, 2025, through Friday, May 16th, 2025, trial will be held from 9:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. After the first week, trial will be held from 9:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. Trial will not be held on Friday, May 23rd, Monday, May 26th, Thursday, June 19th, Friday, July 4th. These are all the holidays. But going back to the celebrities for a second,
I cannot believe we're here.
Agencies, does this look familiar?
I found it very interesting that the jurors were asked, you know, is there anybody on this list that you know? Michael B. Jordan, Kid Cudi, who you and I both know, became a component in Cassie Ventura's lawsuit. We believe Cassie's going to be a part of this case, probably victim one. The allegation is that she had a romantic relationship with him, that Sean Combs may have blown up his car at one point. I didn't know what the connection of Mike Myers, the actor, I didn't know what the connection Michael B. Jordan might be. Kanye West, I mean, as far as I know, Elizabeth, Kanye West had been talking to Sean Combs in jail, maybe called him up. I'm surprised by some of these names. And also, I mean, if you have any more context about what their connection could be to the discussion about the case, but is it my understanding that Kim Porter, his ex, Sean Combs' ex, the mother of his children, some of his children, and who died several years ago, she may play a role in this case as well?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up. Now, Michael Myers, not 100% sure as far as what his kind of connection is and why his name was even on that list. But as far as Michael B. Jordan, I thought about it for a second, and it kind of makes sense possibly why Michael B. Jordan. And that's that they kind of share a common ex, him, Sean Combs, and Michael B. Jordan. That's Lori Harvey. Now, Lori Harvey dated Sean Combs for a brief period a few years ago. And then as we know, or maybe as people know from Instagram, Michael B. Jordan and Lori Harvey went on to have like a years-long relationship after the fact. Now, that's as far as I know is probably what the connection would be as to why Michael B. Jordan specifically was on that list. But there were other famous names on that list as well, too. You know, you had Aubrey O'Day, you had Don Richard, you had, you know, I go back to like faces like, names like Har Pierre, who used to be president of Bad Boy Records. And as far as Kim Porter specifically, now she was brought up when one of these prospective jurors was kind of talking about her role as a chief marketing officer for a local or for a big book publishing company. And I bring that up specifically because apparently there is going to be a memoir that's going to be coming out later this fall. And that memoir is going to be Albie Shore's memoir. And he is a very important kind of central figure a little bit in Diddy's life. And I say that because he is the biological father of Quincy Brown, who Diddy adopted. Diddy, along with Kim Porter, because Kim Porter is Quincy Brown's biological mother. And that's why I say there's such a tangle web when it comes to the Combs / Albie Shore family / you know, Justin Combs' family as well, too. And so that was kind of the context as far as why Kim Porter and even Albie Shore were brought up, in that a prospective juror did work at a local or at a publishing company. I think it was Simon and Schuster. And she was talking about how she had viewed a press release about this memoir that's, again, going to be coming out called Do You Believe Me? And it's pretty interesting, too, because the ties of that, in a sense, are also kind of related to the documentaries. Now, this one, I believe it's the Peacock documentary as opposed to the HBO documentary, and that Albie Shore has made some allegations that have, you know, come from Diddy's team. They have come back and they have you know, said these allegations aren't true when it comes to allegations that somehow, some way Diddy was involved in Kim Porter's death. Now, as far as whether or not this stuff is going to be admitted into trial, that's unclear right now. But It was interesting, kind of the government's point of the case, because they said that they don't really believe that Kim Porter and Albie Shore will really be mentioned in the trial, whereas the defense, they seem pretty adamant that both of those names will be mentioned in the trial. So again, we still have 2 months. We don't know what all the government has up their sleeves, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how the defense comes and counters that, and how all this information that is brought in, some of these documentaries and these podcasts, because it seems that some of the figures that were in these documentaries, according to the government, will also be testifying as witnesses in this case. So it seems like you're kind of just having a little cross pattern above all boards when it comes to what's going on, and how some of these people in Diddy's lives who have appeared on these documentaries will appear inside that courtroom as well, too.
So let's go back to the idea of the jurors having a legal history,
Do we think
whether
Aubrey
it's
O'Day
criminal
needs to
history,
testify?
whether
I
it's
definitely do.
filing lawsuits. You got to tell me what you learned. And please, just to reiterate one more time for our audience, because it struck me, you had a potential juror who stole a wand.
She was probably one of my favorite prospective jurors, I'm not going to lie, that I saw inside that courtroom. And she was interesting. She was a 30-year-old woman. She had talked about how she could be fair and impartial when it comes to this case. She said as far as the list of people and places, she only knew about 2 celebrities on that list. But she was interesting because she said she had a concert or a conference with unrefundable tickets, but then said she could make it work if she were to be selected as part of this juror. But again, she said she could be fair and impartial. She understands that she can't talk about this case with her sister-in-law, who, by the way, she had said in open court that her sister-in-law is a therapist. She had previous training.
Thinking I'm gonna start cutting carbs. I need to drop my belly fat.
Here's the most interesting weight loss fact I learned in the last decade. If I'm trying to lose some body
as a teacher to deal with sexual harassment, something that we saw a lot from these jurors talking about, whether or not their job training actually required them to deal with some levels of sexual harassment, that being a training, that being a course, some type of thing. And then she said she had a friend who was a police officer, but as far as her stealing the wand from Harry Potter World, that was obviously brought up in open court, and she was very honest about it. Honestly, when the judge asked her, what did you steal? And she said a wand, there was an audible chuckle inside that courtroom. But pretty much she wasn't convicted of a crime or anything like that. She had to pay a fine. She was prohibited actually from going to Harry Potter World and Universal Studios in Florida for about a year. So by this time, it looks like she can actually go back there again. But she made another interesting comment whenever she was being questioned by the judge, and that she had said that and again, I have to kind of commend some of these jurors for being just very honest and inside that courtroom today. But, when asked about social media posts and if she made posts about the case, she didn't say she made a post about the case in particular, but instead she said she liked to post about the case. Now, she said it was kind of some comedian making a joke about the baby oil, and she was adamant inside that courtroom today that she found it pretty funny, which is, I couldn't see Diddy's face whenever the baby oil or anything like that was mentioned, but he sat there kind of taking it all in. From what I could see from him, he kind of had no reaction from what I saw, but she was pretty adamant that the post that she saw had to do with baby oil and had to do with Diddy, and she just liked it because, as she says, it was funny. And the judge said that she will proceed as a potential juror in this case.
Yeah, and I saw that there was another juror. And by the way, maybe she stole the Elder Wand because it might be excusable, right? It's the most powerful wand in the Harry Potter world. Everybody should know that. But anyway, side note. But I know there was another juror that sued the Port Authority for an injury. That hurt their back on an escalator. They ended up settling that. There was also a question about insurance fraud. You had another juror who says that their uncle was charged with raping someone else, another family member. So it's interesting to hear about their past legal connections. But talk to me now about what did the jurors say about their exposure to the case? So other than the fact they might know celebrities or places, talk to me about what they've seen about the case, whether that was documentaries, whether or not that was evidence that has been released so far in this case. What did we learn about what the jurors' exposure to the Sean Diddy Combs criminal case has been so far?
Yeah, it seemed like it really kind of varied. Some people have seen the documentary, that either being on HBO, The Fall of Diddy, or if they've seen the one on Peacock as well, too. Not very much mentioned about BBC or anything like that. But as far as just other mentions of what they have learned about the case probably beforehand was just water cooler talk, at the office. One woman said she actually works at HBO, and she was saying that, people have chatted about the case. Now, she says her job in particular didn't have anything to do with the documentary or anything like that. She was just pretty much a photo producer, so she had no kind of ties into the documentary or anything like that. But it seems like a lot of people were kind of familiar with the case, whether it be, them seeing the CNN video, which obviously we'll see in trial, the raw version or whatever they were able to piece together, the government was, and showing that in real time, or real speed, I should say. Some people, again, were familiar with the documentary. Others were familiar just by his arrest. Now, whether or not they knew he had been detained this entire time, that part was a little bit unclear. But as far as the exposure to the case, a lot of people, and I say a lot of people, actually, it kind of just varied, really. Like some people were in the know about it, others weren't so much. But for the most part, there weren't too many who said that they couldn't be fair and impartial just because they, for example, saw the CNN video. One prospective juror said that she had empathy, but she said that she could also be able to kind of listen to the facts, listen to the evidence, and then some even saying that, maybe it doesn't show the entire picture and all of that sort. And so, I was actually kind of surprised at how many people were familiar with this case, given that they might have to become prospective jurors now.
And by the way, real quick, Elizabeth, certain jurors, and I'm going to ask you about this, is they were asked about whether or not they were sexually assaulted or harassed, either them or somebody close to them. And talk to me about what you learned of their responses. And also, did they have to provide that information in a separate room for privacy reasons? Because obviously talking about sensitive material like this in front of an entire courtroom of people could be difficult.
Unison has dropped a free plugin called Zen Master. It's very cold.
That allows you to add lo-fi vibes to your songs or any sounds.
Safeguards were put in place by the court to ask those questions. And from what you heard, what were some of the responses regarding their experience with sexual assault or harassment of any kind?
So as far as some of those really personal questions, I was honestly surprised at how many were forthcoming about talking about it in open court. You know, the press is inside that courtroom. A bunch of attorneys are inside that courtroom, either for the government or for the defense. You know, there are some family members in there. So I was surprised at how many people were forthcoming about talking about either previous sexual abuse. Some talked about molestation. Others talked about being fondled by somebody who was older than them when they were teenagers. So these very sensitive topics. But then there was one juror who, you know, did take it up at a sidebar. And kind of how that works is the judge will ask the question, you know, have you had any prior experience with sexual abuse? And do you feel comfortable talking about this, or would you prefer to do it in a more private manner? So instead of taking them even outside of the courtroom or even into the judge's chambers or anything like that, what they all did, well, not all of them. It's too many lawyers for all of them to kind of rush up there. But what they did was 2 lawyers from each side. So it's going to be 2 people from the defense, 2 people from the government, the court reporter, the judge, and I think the judge's clerk was in that kind of huddle as well, too. And they just kind of spoke honestly and candidly while there's kind of this static going on in the courtroom. But the thing is that Diddy himself can kind of see the live transcript of what is being talked about from this prospective juror. So although we, as the press, can't hear what they are talking about or what these answers are, Diddy can kind of see a live transcription of it from inside, or not from inside, but from at the defense table, where there's kind of a big computer set up and all the live transcriptions kind of going through that. So he can see the answers. So that kind of took care of the logistical issue, because at first they were talking about kind of sealing the answers, then kind of having it separate, and it would be too much, that it would take up too much time. But it seems like the method at which they're going is working out for both sides. You know, they go up, it doesn't take maybe more than about 2 minutes or so. They come back down. The judge will either keep the juror or dismiss the juror. And in this particular case, the juror who went over to the sidebar, she was dismissed for cause. And so that's kind of how they were able to kind of work around this entire situation. It seems to be going pretty smoothly from both ends. I don't see too many complaints from either side on how this process is really going.
Let me add a little bit of legal context to that. So first of all, I would imagine that Combs has a right to see the transcript, right? 6th Amendment right, public trial, due process right. So he has an ability to be there during the jury selection process in his own criminal case. It is interesting when we talk about this jury selection process, because we're not saying jurors were selected today to officially be on the trial. They've moved, or certain jurors have moved through the first stage of the process. Now, they can be stricken for cause. So a specific reason why they cannot serve on this jury, a legitimate reason. Now, that's different from later on, when both sides, generally speaking, the prosecution and the defense, will have the option to put forward preemptory challenges. So both sides are typically granted a certain number of preemptory challenges where they can strike a potential juror without even providing a reason. And that's very advantageous for both the prosecution and the defense. But Elizabeth, moving on from today so far, based on Judge Subramanian, who's the first guard to determine whether or not a juror can be stricken for cause, generally speaking, what did you make of his decision-making today? I mean, did he excuse a lot of jurors? Did he excuse maybe more jurors that were favored by the defense over the prosecution? Because I'll tell you, I know there was one juror, for example, who had apparently been watching the HBO documentary on Diddy. The prosecution was concerned about this juror, and the defense wasn't concerned, but the judge ended up excluding that juror nonetheless. So from what you could see on day one, were there a lot of jurors excused? Did it seem that more of the defense's preferences for jurors were excused, maybe more of the prosecution's? And where are we right now? I mean, do you believe that we're actually going to get a jury seated in a week?
That would be fun.
I would.
Amazing.
I kind of hold my breath a little bit on whether or not we'll actually seat an entire jury this week, but we'll see. You never know what can happen. I'm still in shock that we're even about to go on trial next week. So, don't take my word for it necessarily. But as far as the judge kind of dismissing jurors or keeping jurors, I was surprised at the amount of jurors that he kind of held on to today. To your point, Jesse, just kind of about this one juror, who had seen the documentary, or even one juror I found interesting. She was the one with the ocular migraine. She says it happened.
Marissa Tomei looks amazing at 59. Here's her number one secret.
Many foods we're eating are missing certain elements, certain properties that all of us, but
I'm gonna have to just become a YouTube member because this is crazy. These commercials are like I'm not hating, gotta make your money, but it's like Jesus, commercial. My apologies.
Happens only about a few times a year. She says she needs like about 20, 30 minutes. And I was kind of surprised that the judge had kept her on because, she was also the one to kind of talk about how a dentist who she had worked under was previously inappropriate with her when she was a teenager and all of that sort. And yet the judge decided to keep her on. And there was one moment that Diddy, I could tell, wasn't too fond of this particular juror. I shouldn't say too fond, but you could tell that he didn't seem like he had necessarily wanted her as a part of the juror. And that was that HBO photo producer. And so she had talked about, she also kind of talked about, her previous history when it came to molestation in her family. It was by a cousin and it was done to her and her sister. She says she can feel empathy, but also be fair and impartial. But she did particularly point out that she called the CNN video disturbing and unsettling to watch. But she said that she could listen to all of the facts. And she was also the one who kind of had talked about, the water cooler talk at the office, mainly about Diddy and his case, that type of sort. But the defense did bring up that HBO documentary, but the government said that she shouldn't be excused. And so it seems like for now, she'll be staying on as a prospective juror. But as far as just other jurors that were released, they were released either because they had time constraints. One juror, he just started a job like last week. So him being tied to a 2-month trial, the judge was like, okay, we're going to dismiss you and you're good to go. The other juror that was brought in for that sequestered question, but in the form of a sidebar in open court, that type of thing, she was excused for cause. Then the last juror I was in before I had to come out and do the hit with you, she was kind of talking about how she had watched the documentary, but she kind of had a lot of long pauses when the judge would ask her follow-up questions just about whether or not she could be fair and impartial when particularly or possibly you could see one of the people who did, either analysis or did speak to the documentary, that they could possibly be the ones to testify. And when the judge asked her, can you put away the documentary and actually listen to the facts of the case and listen to this witness testimony in the trial, she kind of had these long pauses and that sort. And so the government was just like, Your Honor, I'm a little worried about this. The defense, they kind of agreed. And so she was another one who was going to be dismissed for cause and that type of sort. But as far as the amount of dismissals over the ones that are being kept, it looks like the ones that are being kept is kind of outnumbering that. So what will that mean for tomorrow when possibly some of them either have to return and then that new batch is coming in as well too, because they're trying to guesstimate around a little more than 50 a day. And so that's a lot of prospective jurors in the potential pool. But really quickly, Jesse, I kind of want to talk about just the demographics of these prospective jurors that I saw inside the courtroom. I was honestly surprised at how diverse this group was. I didn't see a lot of younger faces, or maybe, they possibly were, but I couldn't tell. But it didn't seem like there was any type of issue getting a diverse juror or prospective jurors or anything like that. Again, they come from all different walks of life. They are all different ages, all different races. I will say I didn't see as many white men prospective jurors today, but that could be completely different for tomorrow. But I was pretty surprised at how diverse everyone is, because when I go into that courtroom, I'm just seeing a bunch of lawyers, I'm seeing Diddy, I'm seeing other members of the press, but really you could tell that these were the people of New York. These were the people who are going to ultimately have to decide and judge whether or not Diddy is guilty of the charges that he faces or whether he's not. So we'll see what all happens with that. But again, a very, very diverse pool of jurors there, or prospective jurors.
And let me tell you, this is not an easy case to sit on. Put aside the fact that you're dealing with the celebrity factor and a lot of eyeballs are on it and maybe a lot of pressure for this verdict and 8 weeks, the hardship this might have. This is a complicated legal case. So when I heard a potential juror to say today, I don't really understand why it's the United States versus Sean Combs, as opposed to maybe a private individual going after Sean Combs. That's a little concerning. Now, we cover legal cases all the time. It might seem second place to us, but even reading the indictment, when I go through the specifics of racketeering or the specifics of sex trafficking, it's very complicated. That might work to the benefit of the defense. Maybe it works to the benefit of the prosecution. We shall see. But I'm very curious to see if you can have jurors who will actually fully, and this is not a slight on any potential jurors. It's just, this is a complicated case. And I wonder if they're going to be able to fully grasp and recognize and understand what the elements are of these crimes and what they're supposed to do. It's not an easy case, which brings me to my final question before I let you go, Elizabeth. From the best you could see, did the jurors, the prospective jurors, did they look nervous? Did they seem nervous? Did they seem concerned about being there, being a part of such a...
This game, you're not ready for it.
A monumental case?
Not really, which is kind of surprising in the sense because when the jurors were kind of brought in and they were all brought in together, some were in the gallery, some were actually in the jury box, Diddy and his defense team are facing all of them, which to me, I would feel a little intimidated by. But to me, a lot of these jurors just looked at Diddy as if he was just any other person who possibly or who is going to be facing these types of criminal charges. Now, whether or not inside their minds they're like, oh my God, that's Diddy, that's unclear. Obviously, I can't get inside all of these prospective jurors' minds or anything like that. But there was no noticeable reaction from what I saw. Now, I was kind of in the back on the right-hand side of the courtroom and that sort. But I feel like the jurors were more kind of conflicted just about having to spend what could be 2 months on this jury. I think they were more kind of pressed about that than actually who the defendant was. So from what I could tell, everyone seemed up to the task, or if they weren't up to the task, they were very vocal about that. But as far as just kind of, this possible wow factor or the celebrity factor by seeing Diddy inside the courtroom, nothing that I could tell from being inside there. But who knows, maybe inside their minds, they were thinking something completely different. But again, as far as what I could tell, I feel like a lot of jurors were more kind of worried about the time length of this trial as opposed to who the superstar defendant is.
Nobody has raised
Elizabeth Milner, great reporting as always on what is sure to be a memorable case. It is one of the most significant, memorable criminal trials that we have covered here on Law and Crime. And thank you so much for being our eyes and our ears in that courtroom, because unfortunately we don't have cameras, and I could do a whole sidebar episode on how much I hate that. But thank you so much. Great reporting. And I know it's been raining today, so I'm happy you're able to stay dry. But Elizabeth Milner, thank you again. And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.
Let's see, guys. So,
do you know what eating an avocado can do to the heart?
That was pretty interesting. But now, like I said, I'm really, really interested in seeing what's going on with this potential RICO case, especially as far as the RICO. Where is he? Is RICO around? I'm looking for him. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the YSL trial. There's no outstanding RICO. Like, where is he? To even have like a RICO case, it's like maybe they should have just narrowed it down to something smaller, because I'm definitely puzzled by this whole RICO. I have not yet seen him. We're still looking for him. If anybody sees RICO, just please let me know, because we're definitely looking for RICO. I don't see where there's a possible RICO. But let's see if there's anybody else that's like saying anything about the Diddy case. I think my favorite girl is probably doing something on it. Oh, wait. Let's see. I think that's today.
Nothing. What do I do? Nothing. Tell me what I need to shoot. This is your work. This is celebrity thing first. What are we doing?
I want to see if there's anybody else that has like any background information about this stuff. Let's see. Cat Williams. No, I'm not looking for her. Let's see. The Surprise Witness. Guys, please go follow that Surprise Witness. She's literally one of the best YouTubers out there, honestly. BJ Investigates, hands down. I refer her any day. Like, she's my go-to. I feel like she has her ear to the streets when it comes to this scenario. What? Diddy's manager, Lou Taylor, the next? Oh, see? This is what I was talking about, the Rico part. Like, where is the Rico? Lou Taylor's a part of that Rico. My hair like my mama did. Let's be honest. I discovered how to activate my allegedly. Let's say allegedly. Let me I don't want no issues with Lou Taylor. Real. For years, they've been telling us our hair just now.
Hello, everybody. I have a prediction to make. The prediction is Lou Taylor is going down. It's
if you know, you know.
Prediction. Obviously, I don't
do your
homework
with Lou Taylor
or not because it's in the future. But I want to go through some evidence, some receipts, some things in the public record that make me think Lou Taylor's time is up. Okay, so if you're brand new here, you should know I've been talking about Lou Taylor specifically by name for like about 5 years. In 2 months, it'll make 5 years. Okay, so it's been 4 years and 10 months. Okay, and I literally have hundreds of videos about this woman. Okay.
Please.
So it all started with me reporting on Lou Taylor because she had some conflicts of interest with the Britney Spears conservatorship. She was Britney Spears's business manager. This is all during the conservatorship because, see, before the conservatorship, Britney did not want Lou Taylor to be her manager. She specifically said she was afraid of Lou Taylor. And since the conservatorship has ended, she has, or at least her Instagram, Britney's Instagram, has posted that she was afraid for her life. She thought that Lou Taylor and Robin Greenhill were going to kill her. Yes, she did. She posted that on her Instagram. So somebody posted it on her Instagram, I should say. But we got to rewind the clock back 5 years ago. Because when I started looking into the conservatorship, into the Free Britney movement, into Britney's captivity, my very first hunch was that it was a conspiracy theory. Yes, I did. I was like, maybe these people are just a little bit too worked up. There's no way that Britney Spears being held against her will, The more I looked into it, the more I realized that there really was something wrong. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, of course, we can look back and we can think, well, obviously Britney was being held against her will. I mean, that was obviously not a necessary conservatorship, et cetera, et cetera. There were all these people making money, all these people telling Britney what to do. She couldn't even decide whether or not she wanted to have a kid. She couldn't decide whether or not she wanted to even eat sushi, stuff like that. So it is very easy, even for me sometimes, to kind of forget just exactly how difficult it was to get the word out about Lou Taylor. And I actually do have a whole entire video coming out on this. I'm going to go through a 2021 article with y'all just to show you what we were trying to say to these people and how they were not listening to us. Okay. But I think the tides are turning, and I'm going to tell you why. So I will put a couple of examples in here right now. I'm going to show y'all how hard we really did try to get the mainstream media to pay any attention at all to Lou Taylor, and they just simply wouldn't.
For years, Free Britney activists and advocates have been trying to get the attention of the courts and, frankly, the media, and that hasn't really gotten a lot of traction. They have been cast as conspiracy theorists and crazed fans, and today, Britney basically came out and not only validated everything they've been saying, but she even went 3 or 4 steps further. I found out about this conservatorship last summer in July 2020. When I found out about it, I saw this conspiracy theory TikTok that said Britney Spears had no human rights. She couldn't go to the Starbucks if she wants to. She can't get in her car and go where she wants, and her custody has been affected by this. She can't go on vacation. She can't do the fundamental things that we as American citizens are supposed to be afforded as fundamental liberties. Britney Spears' constitutional rights were violated in February of 2008, whenever she was not allowed due process, the right to be heard, the right to hire her own attorney. She was appointed some guy that just works in this courthouse for his whole life. And clearly he has not been able to do a good enough job standing up to the evil, corrupt system that has imprisoned her. She is a prisoner. And it is time that we do have some reform in this system. But let me tell you one thing. It isn't going to change with reform. It's going to change with accountability.
That is BJ.
These lawyers break laws. They lie to judges. They lie in the court documents that they submit. These lawyers like to hold other lawyers' licenses over their heads. People like John Ergley, who did try to remove this case to the federal court, who now is no longer allowed to practice law. Why is it that people who are trying to fix these injustices are the ones whose licenses, like my own, are being held against us? And people who lie to the court, people who lie and submit fraudulent court documents to the court, they are not going to be held with their license. Recently, a party on the other side of this conservatorship reached out in some sinister ways to try to silence some of my activism, to try to make me not mention that person or that person's business. Well, let me tell you something right now, because I know you're watching. I will be saying everything you tried to do to me.
No fear!
And it is the case that the Free Britney movement is not about me, but it is about corruption.
Yes!
And it is about these corrupt lawyers and this corrupt system. Reva Gates, miraculously no longer a judge here, but she has a cushy job doing mediation for other fans. No. Accountability is the only way that this is going to work. We can reform laws all day long, but these attorneys have shown they have no problem breaking laws. Yes. So let's start to hold them accountable, and let's start by making sure that no matter what Britney Spears says today, we remember what she has been saying for the last 8 to 10 years. That this is too controlling. Far too much control her dad has over her. She's being subjected to drug tests, but the conservators are not. How does that work? How does she get to pay the people that are keeping her in prison to give her drug tests, but they won't sit for one? How does that work? It should be a zero-way street.
Two-way street.
She needs to be out of this conservatorship.
Like I said in my last video about this matter, I was talking to the New York Times directly. I direct communication and contact with the people who were working on the Free Britney documentary and the several Free Britney stories that they did run. You'll remember the New York Times was like the biggest publication to put this stuff out. They were the ones that were putting out interviews with supposed whistleblowers, interviews with supposed former bodyguards, etc., etc. And it trickled all the way down. Every now and again, somebody would mention Lou Taylor. Every now and again, they would mention her. But really the only person who ever had any foot in the door of a mainstream media who talked about Lou Taylor in the way that it really deserved to be spotlighted
100%
was Liz Crokin. And there were AstroTurf campaigns to make people think that it was a QAnon documentary, which it most certainly was not. It was not. It was a documentary about a woman who was being enslaved. That's what it was about. Okay. So when Britney's conservatorship was kind of winding up, Lou Taylor did catch a few strays. She was called out by Britney's lawyer, Matt Rosengart, for essentially stealing from Britney. Now, this is coming from Matt Rosengart, not me, but Matt Rosengart basically said Lou Taylor was helping herself to.
I just got paid $60,000 for my car crash from using this app on my phone. And I don't know if you could see this, but it's called
to Britney's money. And
Hey guys, please
specifically,
hit the
she
like
was using
button.
Britney's
Please hit
money
the
to sue
subscribe button.
people who were criticizing the conservatorship. She was using Britney's money to sue people who were criticizing her, namely Brian Scott Kuchar, an alleged fan who's now trying to steal my copyright, which it won't work. But after Britney's conservatorship was over, it pretty much just looked like Lou Taylor was just going to get away with it. And again, this is after Britney Spears had said that she thought Lou Taylor was trying to unalive her. Okay, so I start talking about it in 2020. I also very quickly find out, because through public records, that Lou Taylor is also connected to the Jenners and the Kardashians, namely Kim, Kylie, and Kris. That's where I was able to find Lou Taylor connections in those public business documents. And so, of course, I start talking about that as well. Then during the time I'm looking into the Britney case and into, this other stuff, Kanye West starts tweeting that they're trying to put him in a conservatorship. So, of course, I'm like, is Lou Taylor involved in that? And then recently, Kanye West actually even did tweet Lou Taylor with the eyes to the side emoji, and I also made a video on that. But in general, again, nobody's paying attention to Lou Taylor. The only people who are trying to call attention to her are YouTubers and people who are fans of Britney Spears. But the mainstream media and the celebrity Hollywood world did very largely seem to just give Lou Taylor a pass. Even after seeing what was done to Britney Spears under the management of Lou Taylor, people were continuing to put their money with Lou Taylor. See, she is not just any old manager, although she does appear to be a one-stop shop. But I do want to show y'all on loutaylor.net, and it does say copyright 2023 Lou Taylor. So I'm assuming this really is her website. There's her right there. Founder, CEO, TriStar Sports and Entertainment Group. Lou Taylor's a leader in the business management industry and consistently strides ahead of her competitors. Now, who are her competitors? I mean, I would love to know. But look under the Lou Taylor Services section, and this is all the stuff that she does. Okay, so I just want to point out to y'all that this woman is not just any old, I can try and find you some jobs like at WME or something. No, this is what she does with people. This is what she does for people. This is the services she provides. Preparing, implementing, and monitoring operational budgets, paying monthly bills, cash management, incorporating entities, partnerships, structuring, loan out corporations, assisting with credit acquisition. Staff are also prepared to cover the management of domestic staff, contractors, vendors, so people to come and clean your house and stuff. They can provide support with visa and immigration assistance, trusts, wills, and estate planning oversight. Lou can provide tour reporting and venue audits, as well as assist in risk and insurance assessments and coverage. Her concierge department can provide support with real estate acquisition, sales and rentals, property and estate management, and aircraft and yacht management. Lastly, Lou offers medical claims processing, contract servicing, weekly cash reporting, and monthly financial statements. These are just a few of the ways Lou Taylor works to super server the clients she represents. I mean, what that means? Your super server or clients? Maybe super serve. I don't know. And it does make me wonder if the New York Times or if any news media publications would have actually focused on the things that I do believe are the most important things they should have focused on. It does make me wonder how many of these clients that Lou Taylor is representing would have been able to get out of it or would have absolutely left Lou Taylor's services. Because like I said, even hearing all of the things from the fans, which again, we were not getting any backup from any traditional mainstream media, but even hearing all of the complaints from the fans, even despite me having my videos up all out to sea, Justin Bieber still, for some reason, decided to hire Lou Taylor. Now, do I really think that he happily went along and hired Lou Taylor? No, I don't. No, I don't. I know that is what is being pushed on the internet right now. And I do know that some people do have some insider sources. I will tell you, I do not have any insider sources. My messages come straight from the mothership, aka the Lord. There is no human interference between me and the messages. Okay. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the antenna's wrong. But they got people out here saying that, oh, the reason that Justin Bieber started working with Lou Taylor was because of Diddy. That doesn't make any sense to me. That makes no sense to me because Diddy had been in Justin Bieber's life since the very beginning, since he was 15 years old. He could have switched to Lou Taylor at any moment. But Justin Bieber apparently wanted to leave Scooter Braun and he wanted to go with somebody else. And to be honest, there's really not a lot of people. There's really not a lot of people who can do the stuff, the tour managing and the getting the finances in order. And Lou talks the talk. She talks a big game. She sure does. Till your ass isn't a conservatorship. But last year, 2024 did start to unravel a little bit more for Lou Taylor, as I always knew they would be. I mean, I had said all the way back in 2021, whenever Lou Taylor came to my law firm, she hired the law firm that I'd started working at. She wanted me to stop talking about her conflicts of interest. Because in the conservatorship, she was Britney's accountant. She was the tour manager. She was all of these things, right? Plus, she was the person who was reporting all of it to the court. She was basically auditing her own self and then bringing it to the court like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. So, I mean, but last year, about a year ago, almost exactly, a little bit over a year ago, Lil Rod Jones would file a lawsuit that would begin what I think now is the downfall of Lou Taylor. I mean, I think I was the first domino, like I said in that video I made 4 years ago.
Monday CRM has the best AI features in the game,
especially in sales.
Hands down.
So for me, email composition works.
And the person
after this
who
live,
this
I will be buying my membership for YouTube.
Is a bully.
That's why
has hurt people.
We would not go through this no more.
And terrified people and scared people, using the legal system and using her power, connections, and resources.
You look like she's the Harry Potter, right?
Because she tried to scare me into silence.
She does. She looks like
and
a Harry Potter character.
Tell her and the whole rest of the world that not only can I not be scared into silence, but her time, her reign of terror, being able to scare people into silence is coming to an end. And if I have to be the first domino that falls to bring down her reign of terror, I'm happy to do that. I mean, obviously I was the first domino and I had to give up my career to say that stuff. I don't want y'all to feel bad for me. Okay. I don't, because I'm very blessed. I'm blessed and highly favored. I do not want anybody to feel bad for me, but let the record reflect. I need to say it right now. There was a time where not only was it not popular to be talking about Lou Taylor, but in fact, people were suffering immense consequences. There was another person, Lou Taylor, sued, who had an Instagram account called Investigate Lou Taylor. And you know why they sued? You know why she sued them? For copyright infringement. Okay. So there was a time where it was very difficult to talk about Lou Taylor, or else you would have to suffer. I had to give up my career. I gave it up. Did I get fired? Nope. I quit. Did I lose my license? Nope. I gave it up. But if I would have kept down that road, I know for a fact, I just know for a fact Lou Taylor would have tried to have me disbarred. So I wasn't giving her that power. And maybe, who knows, maybe after Lou Taylor's in federal prison, I'll get it back again. I'll probably not, though. I don't know. Who knows? Innocent until proven guilty. But last year in February, Little Rod Jones sued Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs. Now, Lou Taylor famously met Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs all the way back in the early 90s, whenever she was working at some type of accounting firm, and one of the clients was Uptown Records, who was at the time run by Andre Harrell, and Diddy worked there. Okay, so as you know, as the story goes, 1993 or 4, Diddy does leave from Uptown Records. He starts his own imprint under Clive Davis, called Bad Boy Records. And then, of course, Lou keeps Diddy as the client. Now, Bad Boy Records was started only about a year or two after TriStar Sports and Entertainment. So really, Lou and Diddy came up together. All right. Well, last year, Diddy got sued by Lil Rod Jones, a producer. And Lil Rod Jones said that Diddy had SA'd him and some other stuff. But in that lawsuit, Lil Rod Jones called out a woman by the name of Robin Greenhill, and he called her the accountant. Lil Rod Jones said that this Robin Greenhill person was the one responsible for making wire transfer payments to workers. Okay. Now, Robin Greenhill is notoriously Lou's right-hand woman.
Lou, Robin, how are you guys? Listen, have you guys talked to Britney at all since the divorce filings? Is there anything you can say? Are you guys here to help her in LA? Is there anything that you can say at all? You guys are so integral in her life for the longest time. No comments? Lou, anything? Robin. The conservatorship, a lot of people are concerned for her right now. Robin, the conservatorship. I mean, people really think that maybe she needs help at this point. Lou, anything? Robin? All right, no comments. No comments, thank you.
It was not Lou Taylor who was on the scene every day at the circus tour, okay? It was Robin Greenhill. It was not Lou Taylor who was sitting having these management meetings saying she's going to work on her birthday. No, that was Robin Greenhill, whose employer is TriStar Sports and Entertainment. So then just 1 month after that, Diddy's houses were raided for ST investigation. 2 months after that, May 2024, the CNN footage comes out. 4 months later, a woman by the name of Dawn Richard, this is September 11th is when she filed this lawsuit, okay? September 11th, 2024, last year, Dawn Richard sued Diddy. Now, Dawn Richard was in Diddy Dirty Money, which is a band with Diddy. She also was an employee working as a songwriter. She was a performer in and of her own right. So Dawn Richard sued Diddy in September. Now, at the time, she sued a certain amount of parties, but that lawsuit would later be amended literally 2 months ago to add none other than TriStar Sports and Entertainment. Now, in the lawsuit, it does appear that TriStar Sports and Entertainment is not being brought in on ST allegations or anything sexual. It actually appears that TriStar Sports and Entertainment was brought in under more of an intellectual property or a copyright dispute, which, I mean, the irony, because that's why Lou likes to go after people. But Dawn Richard sued Diddy the same year Lil Rod Jones did. Lil Rod was in February. Then by September, here's Dawn Richard suing Diddy, September 11th. 5 days later, it was announced that Diddy had been arrested, indicted, all of that, September 16th. But also,
keep being lazy about cleaning
guys,
your
I'm paying
apartment.
for the membership.
No, seriously. Home
Paying for
Aglow will
membership as
clean
we
it for
speak.
just
This is gonna be the last
$9.
commercial. I promise. This is the last one. I'm paying for the membership right now. I promise you, this is not gonna happen again.
but also during the month of September, right at the same time Diddy was getting arrested, right at the same time that it was being announced that he was being indicted on ST charges, the same month that Dawn Richard first sued Diddy. Now, this is not a Jane Doe. It's a different type of lawsuit. Tony Busby is not her lawyer, okay? She has Lisa Bloom. What do we know about Lisa Bloom? Well, she's the daughter of Gloria Allred. And what do we know about both of them? They don't often miss. When they train their sights on somebody, like Harvey Weinstein. But during that same exact time, whenever a former employee, Dawn Richard, the second one that sued Diddy in the year, right? Lil Rod Jones was first, and they're using their names, St. John Doe. September 11th, she sues. September 16th, he's indicted, he's arrested, all this. And during that same month of September, The Hollywood Reporter puts out this article. September 25th is 10 days after Diddy was indicted, arrested, and all that. In Diddy and Britney Spears' legal sagas, one management firm appears, TriStar Sports and Entertainment Group, which was scrutinized for its role in the pop singer's conservatorship, had its accountant referenced in a civil lawsuit against Sean Combs, alleging cash payments to S workers. TriStar Sports and Entertainment, prominent celebrity management firm that was scrutinized for its involvement in Britney Spears' conservatorship, is in the spotlight again for its work with Diddy, okay? So that all happened. And then, like I said, in March this year, just a couple of months ago, Dawn Richard updated her lawsuit. Lisa Bloom is now suing on the behalf of Dawn Richard, TriStar Sports and Entertainment. So now Lou's company, TriStar, has been added to that as of 2 months ago. And with Diddy's trial set to begin pretty much right now, today, as we speak, May 5th, it's not opening statements. Opening statements are not going to come until next week, next Monday, a week from today. But Diddy's trial is upon us, okay? The jury is being selected. It's starting today. They just had their last pre-trial conference on Thursday. It's happening. And just about 2 weeks ago, not one, not two, not three, but 4 massive, influential influencers are talking about Britney Spears' conservatorship and the control that Britney face. Now, I did make an entire video. I think I made 2 or 3 videos on this, but when Britney was going down, when Britney was being brought down by this industry in order to control her and put her into a conservatorship, Diddy was just right there on the fringes. That day that Britney had her comeback after shaving her head and all of that, like she, wore the black outfit. It was like the 2007 VMAs, the year before the conservatorship started, and everybody was calling her fat, even though she had just had 2 babies in 2 years. Importantly, she also wasn't fat, but even if she was, who cares? She just had 2 babies, but they like put her on the wide angle screen and all that. Guess who she went party with and had to be carried out of the club the night before? This is all on Getty Images. Go look it up yourself.
We're
Diddy.
YouTube Premium. No more commercials.
Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs was throwing the
No more
party. It
commercials.
appeared.
I promise.
I mean, I've done videos about this. Go watch them. So again, Diddy and Lou go way back. They go way back. Their paths cross over each other. Lou also manages, or did manage, J-Lo. I don't know if she still does. But just in the last 2 weeks, Candace Owens, who literally, when she goes live, y'all, there's like 40,000 people in there. I know a lot of y'all are not the biggest Candace Owens fans. That's fine. You don't have to be. There's 45,000
Shout
people
out to Candace Owens
in her chat sometimes. Okay. And then not only that, not only did this, I'm the first domino. Okay. Then we have all these other dominoes, but the dominoes are getting bigger and they're falling harder. Okay. Because not only was it Candace Owens, it was also this guy, Ian Carroll, who, I think he's a plant, but people are listening to him. Then you have this Brett Cooper. She's coming out talking about Lou Taylor, and they're all of them are talking about it in the context of Justin Bieber. They're claiming that they have inside sources who are close to Justin Bieber, and I think they probably do. I don't think they're making it up, but I do think, you always got to be careful with an inside source, because an inside source has their own bias as well. So you just really got to be careful of what you're taking and presenting to the public as if it's facts whenever you really don't know. However, everybody's talking about Lou Taylor now. Okay, because remember, I told you at the beginning of this video, it used to be real hard to talk about Lou Taylor. You might lose your job, you might have to quit, you might have to reroute your entire career, you might get sued, you might have to raise a legal fund or whatever. But now all of a sudden we have articles coming out. There was more articles that came out too. I'm not going over every single thing. Okay, I'm just giving y'all some high points. Articles coming out. You have TriStar being added to civil litigation. You have murmurings behind redacted lines in court documents. It appears that now the government is taking a slightly different pattern of racketeering, and it just makes me wonder, is this going to be more financial based than trafficking based? But I have always known, and what I am about to say is the truth. You cannot look into Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs' finances in a criminal forensic way without instantly running in to Lou Taylor or TriStar Sports and Entertainment. For example, whenever Diddy was trying to get out of jail on bail before trial, remember he was trying to get out, he put up his house as collateral. The house was like about $50 million. And guess who had the house appraised? Not Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs. No.
Capacitor course check is okay.
Was Lou Taylor. TriStar Sports and Entertainment had gotten that house appraised. Okay. So you cannot look into Diddy's businesses. Another example is that a lot of his businesses have the principal place of business at TriStar Sports and Entertainment. CO Opco, or whatever the thing that seems to own Kim Porter's intellectual property, managed at Lou Taylor's address, or it was. I made a video about that as well. Okay. So I've always known, if the feds are in any serious way looking into Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs and they're serious about it, they're immediately going to run into Lou Taylor. So then the question becomes, are they going to ignore what they find? Or maybe in Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs, she didn't do anything wrong. But why has there been no criminal investigation into the Britney Spears matter? My guess is because nobody wants to call out the conservatorship lobby, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen as well. I'm going to make another video like this in 5 years and say, I've been trying to tell y'all for 10 years. I've been trying to tell y'all you don't care. It's all fun and games. It's all fun and games when you're making fun of Britney Spears and Bam Margera and Wendy Williams. It's all fun and games. But when it happens to you, when you were out here cheering and squawking and arfing like a freaking seal over some stupid using taxpayer money bill to fund federally funded slave owners, and you have to answer to that person before you wipe your freaking ass every day, you're going to remember me trying to tell you, all right? Because that ain't happening to me. You'll never find me in one. So, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? Will Lou Taylor be called to take the stand? Will Lou Taylor ever face any consequence for anything she's ever done, including trying to bully me, trying to, in my opinion, innocent until proven guilty, but it was extortion. It was extortion. It was stop talking about my conflicts of interest in Stonebridge Investment Council, or else I'm going to make your job, your life very difficult. I'm going to ruin your career. I'm going to ruin everything you've been working from the trailer park to the Ivy League to earn. Lou Taylor attempted to steal. She attempted to steal what I had earned. You cannot steal from God's favorite, stupid. Everybody who has crossed me, I don't even do this. I just sit here and do my little investigations, okay? Every single person who has tried to cross me, I say tried because it doesn't work. First of all, it won't work. But then second of all, they pay the consequences. And I have a feeling it might finally be time 4 years later. You know, the irony is today, May 5th, is the day, the 4-year anniversary to the day that I got that fateful call that Lou Taylor, the president and CEO of TriStar Sports and Entertainment, wanted me to stop talking about Stonebridge Investment Council. Today is the 4-year anniversary of her.
It's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, your DSCC chair, and I need your help immediately. Democrats and
Now, remember, I had already been talking about her for a year. She bided her time. She waited. She waited until I started working at a very prestigious law firm, something that I had worked my entire life to earn. She waited. Turns out the Lord might got more patience than her. So, yeah, mark it right here, because there's going to be a time I feel is my prediction. There will be a time where it will be so obvious. Lou Taylor is what she is. Lou Taylor did what she did. And Lou Taylor does what she does. At one point in time, it is finally going to be so obvious. It's going to be like, duh, we all always knew that. But I need the record to reflect we did not. It took some very brave, very determined, very persistent, dare I say even maybe hard-headed people who were abused, who were traumatized, who were run out of our careers, who were forced to face financial uncertainty, to choose the truth. I will not allow my narrative to be erased, and I will never stop talking about it. Looking back on the whole thing, there's not nothing I would do different. I'd do it all the same, and y'all are going to learn to stop messing with God's favorite. That's all I really have for this one. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye. Welcome into my world. You're playing my game. Thought that you could come up and they're fitting off of my knee. Talking out the side of your neck like you're insane. Cortisol levels to the roof. Inflame. Kids these days so shameless. Selling out real friends for a paycheck. Mama didn't teach them no home training. Wanna be me so bad, but they failing. Step to the plate though. I'll take a challenger. I ain't scared of no low life scavenger. I should warn you though. If you haven't heard, I know Colleen, ukulele ballanger. Shots been fired. Wanna tell that? Say it to my face though. Not behind my back. Won't be long till you share it in the group chat. And when I call you up, you're gonna backtrack. And you should've kept my name out your mouth. That's ego, how it all turned out. When you try to use my name for clout, keep on going. Give you something you can talk about.
When things look out of control, isn't it time for you to take control?
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. This was definitely a deep look into the Diddy ongoing scenario. We're gonna tune back in a little bit later once the Diddy trial and the jury selection for today's concluded, and we'll go over that as well. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.